right, it is 9:30, so we are going to get started. Welcome to our beautiful Kelley offices. We're so excited that you can be with us here today. And it is hard to believe that it has been almost a year that we haven't been working regularly in our offices. And over the last few months, as I've been connecting with people in the business community and connecting with our clients, I kept getting the same question. Shannon, beyond us realizing that COVID has resulted in excessive Netflix consumption, how much has it really impacted the way we connect with Canadian consumers? How much should we be looking at changing our strategy? What are ways that we should be pivoting and looking at how we can do things differently? And so I had a conversation with Terri Cameron, who you see here on screen, and with over 11 years here at the agency and a lot more years of experience prior to joining Kelley. She's worked at two of the biggest media agencies in Canada. She also was a course instructor at Mohawk College for media. She works across all of our clients here at the agency, has a wealth of knowledge and experience in this area, and I couldn't keep all of her great knowledge and wisdom to myself. And so I tricked her into sharing this brilliance with us here today. So Terri, thank you so much. We're thrilled and we're excited, and we know we're going to learn a lot from you. So over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Shannon. Like Shannon said, I've been doing this for quite a while, and I'm consider myself really lucky that I'm one of those people who has the great fortune of doing something that they actually really enjoy and they love and they're passionate about and they believe in. And I've been doing it for almost 25 years now with lots of great experiences. So I'm really excited to have a chance to talk about this. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And specifically what we'll talk about today is how the pandemic obviously changed customer behavior, how that affected our media habits, and what does that mean for marketers moving forward in terms of how they connect with their customers. And then really quickly, we'll just go through kind of our top 5 tips for planning your paid media, both in 2021 and in the future. So it's kind of funny when we think about it, it's actually been almost a year, like almost to the date, give or take 10 or 12 days or whatever. And there's no person that was immune to the direct or the indirect effects that the pandemic caused. So as we kind of approach that 1-year anniversary of, our kind of rolling on and off lockdowns, we thought we'd take a couple minutes to look at what our lives look like today, because ultimately that, is affecting everything we do, including how we consume media. So every part of our life has changed. Obviously, how we work, how we socialize, how we creatively collaborate with each other, how we entertain each other, because it's forced us into this virtual and digital world. It's forced us to, have amazing headsets that, might look ridiculous, but make us sound pretty good. It's forced us to, focus more on our health and our wellness, not just from an immunity perspective, but also just with, fitness and taking care of ourselves. We know that, vitamin and supplement sales are up over 50%. We know that the relaxation app, the Calm app, recently doubled its valuation. So our health and wellness has become much more important to us. We know that we're a lot more conscious about what we're consuming versus previously. Sometimes it was, more spontaneous or impulsive consumption. We think a lot more about what we're buying now. We're more mindful because we're making these purchases online. And the sellers who helped to make that easy for us are obviously the ones that won out in the e-commerce space. There's been a huge upshift to pickup and delivery models. We know that Skip the Dishes specifically, they saw almost a 90% jump in new restaurants signing into the platform during COVID. So obviously that was in response to not only keeping their doors open and maintaining small businesses, but also in response to us as consumers needing that, for our lives. And lastly, there's an increased love for local. And we love this one because, it recognizes that, people want to help maintain their communities, support small businesses, and they're making deliberate decisions to make that happen. And if we look at the numbers specifically, and we're going to talk about e-commerce for just a second, 73% of Canadians have shopped online in the past month. 90% of us are using free delivery service, and more the benefit of free delivery is something that consumers are really growing to expect. I love this third one. So 25% of shoppers have used click and collect. And it's funny when I think about it, because prior to COVID, especially with the grocery retailers, they were, clamoring for people to start trying out their online shopping and curbside pickup. They were begging for people to give this a shot. And now when we look at it today, they basically can't keep up with the demand of people wanting that from them. So there's obviously a huge amount of growth that's happened there. The statement of shopping online makes my life easier. Just prior to COVID, in early winter, January 2020, about 25% of Canadians were saying, yeah, shopping online, makes my life a little bit easier. But if we look just 1 year later, now 41% of us are saying this. And that, shows just how much we've come to rely on online shopping, and how much, it gives an indication of how much moving forward that will stay with us. So that, e-commerce is definitely a part of our lives, and is a part of, what is going to be important to business. And then last but not least, we talk about all this online shopping, but we know that obviously price consciousness is something that's been very important to us. We're making intentional purchases, and we're doing so with the expectation that we can hopefully get some kind of discounting, because from a finance perspective, we're, some of us are in different financial stages, but for the most part, there's a huge majority of people that are looking for those discounts online. And then most importantly to, myself and marketers like us, there's been a huge shift to obviously more media consumption. So Nielsen put out a recent study that said that the way they framed it was, when consumers stay at home amid broadly disruptive events, that their media consumption rises to about 60%. So that's pretty astounding figures. So with us consuming so much more media during the pandemic, especially in the throes of it, how did that affect what happened last year? And how does that affect how we're going to plan media moving forward? So quick confession, I love media, like all media. And I'm really, really lucky to work at Kelley, because I get to operate in a really great media environment. And I just want to tell you about that really, really quickly, because I also want to touch on something that came up in the last Toast and Jam from February. So for anyone who was on our February Toast and Jam, it was fantastic. Our friend Evan did an amazing job talking all about the benefits of LinkedIn. But we did have some people question us questions like, oh, did LinkedIn collaborate with you guys? Did you get paid for this? So we just want to make it really clear. No, we were not paid by LinkedIn. We don't have any accountability to them. We just really strongly believe in the product that they have, and wanted to share our marketing insights to help empower you as marketers. So let me tell you a little bit about, media strategy and how we buy at Kelley. So like I said, we're totally media agnostic. We don't do bulk media buy purchases that then get allocated to client campaigns. Every media strategy and plan that we formulate is truly customized and tailor-made for each client to help meet their objectives. Obviously, we guarantee full transparency of fees. We go direct to supplier with no middleman or markup. We do everything in-house. I love number 4, because this is something that I found really unique to Kelley, is that we work in a collaborative way with our creative teams. So in past experiences, we've been a bit more departmentalized. So I would work with like-minded media individuals, and that's great. But here at Kelley, we do that as well. Obviously, there's lots of media people that we collaborate with, but I work equally as closely with the copywriters and the art directors. And what that does for us is really give us the ability to look beyond research on the tactics and ad formats and things like that makes sense, and instead work with the creative team to help identify really key insights or key messages that we can help bring to life through the media messaging. So through the media execution, excuse me. And that's a really unique position to be in. And it really helps us develop media strategies that, in my mind, just go beyond the numbers and make them much more relevant to consumers. We optimize the quality of our media, obviously, and we act in a very collaborative partnership with our clients. We will talk to sales teams. We will talk to customers, anything that gives us insight into ways that we can connect with potential customers. Because we don't believe that developing a media strategy is something that we do in silo here at the agency. It's definitely something that that is collaborative with our clients. So as we discussed, the pandemic has uprooted our lives, causing us to behave differently than we typically have. And as someone who really, has relied on data from past activity to help predict future behavior so that I can plan how to target you with advertising, I have to say the past year's changes has really tested our pivoting chops. So let's kick it off and we'll talk a little bit about television. So about 10 years ago, Canadians, we were watching about 30 hours of TV a week. And at the height of the pandemic, we kind of hit those big numbers again, especially with our news consumption. And right now we've kind of leveled back off to about pre-pandemic numbers where we're watching about 21 hours or so of traditional cable TV a week. And while it's true that the younger demo, maybe adults 18 to 34, they're definitely spending less time with like linear TV, but even they are still watching for about 10 hours a week. So from an overall time perspective, we actually give a lot to television, but we know a shift is definitely happening. So we have seen the ratings for top 30 shows drop by about 20% in the last 7 years. We know that about 31% of former cable subscribers have cut the cord, and right now it's estimated that that number could hit about 40% by the end of next year. Now, what's happening is that the rise of the kind of over-the-top streaming choices is becoming increasingly more appealing to Canadians. It's appealing to kind of the price-conscious people who feel like they never necessarily benefited from the skinny cable packages and the a la carte choices that were offered to us, that were supposed to give us choice and value. There's people that feel that they never really got that value from it. The over-the-top streaming services are becoming more popular with millennials who don't necessarily have an aversion to live TV, but they've kind of grown to like the ease and selection and choice that they offer versus a cable subscription where you have to sign up and get the set-top box and have installation and things. And then obviously when we think about the cord nevers are going to be moving out of their homes, really their family homes really soon and getting their own places. And the idea of them getting a cable subscription isn't even necessarily on their radars. So, sorry, I've lost my screen here. So how do we think traditional broadcasters are going to respond? Well, in many ways, they have already started. They are making their content available through websites and other apps. It's not necessarily always, live or anything, but it's free with advertising. And they're working with marketers to create campaigns that deliver ads across devices. So they were creating campaigns that transcend traditional TV as well as over the top, as well as on demand, so that they can still deliver that really high reach and frequency. And they're also working with marketers to focus on campaigns that deliver just digital experiences. So if a marketer has a campaign where measurability and efficiency are really necessary, they can work with you in that space as well. So what does the future hold? How do we connect with our TV how do we leverage TV to connect with our consumers? In the immediate future, we know that there's still a variety of awesome programming coming out. It's being created and launched throughout the year, not just in fall. And we know that the returning favorites and new titles that will keep audiences tuning in for the next year or two for, probably about 20 hours or so a week. But we know that the long-term forecast probably has traditional TV, online video, over-the-top streaming services. They're all going to somewhat start moving into the same space. And in that space, their ability to target and be efficient and be measurable will definitely be the battlefield. So let's stay on the broadcast trend and let's talk about radio for a second. If we look a ways back, maybe around 2007, we were listening to the radio for about 18 hours a week. And pre-COVID, we were at about 14 and a half hours listening weekly. And a heavy proportion of that was during the AM and PM rush hours. So at the beginning of lockdown, the tuning levels fell as a lot of Canadians switched to working from home. We saw average minute audiences, especially in the AM drive, decline by almost half in some markets. But since about May of last year, radio audiences are starting to bounce back. It hasn't yet reached pre-COVID lockdown levels, and we're not sure when it necessarily will. But we know that the second wave of lockdown had a much smaller effect on listenership and total reach than the first lockdown did. And we know that 50% of Canadians continue to work outside of the home. And if we look at urban centers like Toronto, 65% of people still work outside of the home. So a lot of people are still going about their regular commuting type of routine. For individuals like us who have switched to working from home currently, we've adopted kind of a new pattern for listening where our kind of weekday listenership is mirroring our weekend listenership a little bit. So a little bit more even throughout the day. And that's amplified by the use of things like smart speakers and apps. So radio's pretty resilient, but there is something that's still happening. So the threat that's coming is, or that's happening right now, is the low advertising dollars, because although audiences have started to bounce back, the advertising dollars haven't necessarily returned with the listeners. And for that reason, the Canadian Association of Broadcasters, they're a little bit worried that some of our stations across the country are at risk. It's difficult to hear because we know that the industry is evolving. We know that they're adopting to digital technologies that will help increase their listenership. Our radio stations kind of personify that love for local that's important to us. Many of the stations are kind of meeting consumer desire for on-demand listening with, podcasts with their beloved hosts. Shout out to the Roz and Moga Show. Some stations are also meeting the need for, people's desire for video content by filming their morning shows and filming interviews and having video that people can watch and relate to and connect with. And they're promoting themselves obviously through online channels as well. Many are also streaming worldwide, so they're not only building their listenership locally, but also growing their listenership beyond. And we know that advertising rates currently have been lowered and bonus packages extended to help make marketers feel more comfortable with coming back to radio. So the future of radio, right now, it's a little bit unclear. Again, audiences are coming back, but advertisers play a really big role. So with those audiences coming and with rates currently being a little bit lower and bonusing being really good, it may be a really good time to consider radio for your local marketing campaigns. And while we're on the topic of audio, I'll touch really quickly on podcasts because we get asked about podcasts a lot. So the reality is that despite COVID-19 disruption, the podcast listenership continues to show incremental growth every year. That growth really did slow last year for sure, but listenership still grew 1% versus a year ago. So right now we have about 27% of Canadians listening monthly, about 18% listening weekly, and hours tuned actually still did go up last year. In 2019, we were listening for about 5.5 hours a week. Last year, we were listening for about 6.2 hours a week. And a lot of that is driven by like power listeners who love podcasts and found themselves at home with more time to listen to their podcasts. And those individuals were really seeking kind of news content to help keep them informed, as well as a lot of uptake in comedy genres as we sought a way to kind of get some joy and escape in our lives. So obviously with many Canadians still working at home, there's a higher percentage of podcast listenership happening throughout the day versus kind of those commuter times. So the future trend shows that, again, growth has slowed down a little bit, and it might continue to kind of have a slow growth compared to where we thought it was going, but the growth is still happening. And we know that, podcast listeners tend to be a bit more educated, upper income, urban. So if that's an audience that you seek as part of your marketing, podcasts are definitely still worth considering. All right. Out of home. I do love out of home. It had a rough year last year because we all went home, we all stayed indoors. And despite our trips to the grocery store increasing, the second quarter of 2020 saw a lot of caution from people, from businesses, and from the government. And it was really tough for marketers like us to justify maintaining an outdoor ad campaign with such a real risk of much lower audiences. And we saw Waze traffic, our presence outdoors measured by Waze. We saw it come back up in the summer. We got a bit more, embraced some cautious normalcy in our lives. But then those traffic levels lessened again in wave two, but not like it did in wave one. So currently we're estimating that our out of home circulation levels will probably be back to about pre-pandemic numbers by about midsummer. So what's in store for out of home and how should we be leveraging it? Well, I'm happy to say it's actually pretty exciting. Out of home media is growing their digital faces pretty much as quickly as government policy and money will allow. And it's providing the ability for marketers to, adapt their creative really quickly. They can plug into APIs for real-time data alignments, and digital out of home just simply looks really great. Out of home suppliers are now connected to mobile networks, so they can tap into retroactive location data for people, and see people who have previously demonstrated an interest in something specific, and they can combine their out of home and mobile campaigns to create retargeting strategies. So there's a lot of great stuff happening out of home, and probably one of the most exciting trends is toward programmatic out of home. So similar to what we see with traditional digital programmatic, that can now happen with out of home, where you can work with suppliers on kind of trigger-based advertising campaigns. So you can do standard things like news and weather and locations, but slowly we're getting into more advanced technologies like audience characteristics, whereby you can work with vendors to identify the characteristics of your audience, like I'm looking for in-market auto intenders. And digital out of home boards can continually move around to areas of highest concentration where those people currently are. And it's all happening in real time. So it's a really exciting place to be in out of home. So as with regards to, the future of media planning, I'd say that, previously out of home was considered a great place for like mass awareness, high frequency, but now you can also be considering it for more, more targeted audience targeting type campaigns. All right, press media. So we know that about 70% of people consume press media, newspaper press media in all of its different formats, but 7 out of 10 consume on an average week. When we look at magazine readership, again, print and digital, there's about 80% consumption in a given month. And at the height of the pandemic, readership grew. Publishers like community papers especially saw a good benefit because people were at home. They had a greater desire to learn about what was happening in their city. Again, that love for local. Today, we're spending about an hour a day with press media in all their forms. But we also know that printed circulations have kind of been in a steady, slow decline since the mid-90s. And while the pandemic did provide some marginal increases at the onset, most readership has returned to that declining pre-COVID levels. And compounding this, similar to what we saw in radio, is the significant reductions in ad spend, which has resulted in some cuts and layoffs and some publications to close. With printing and distribution costs continuing to increase, it's becoming really hard for press media to continue. However, we know that there is opportunity. And I think one thing that we can hopefully all agree on is that we crave well-known and reputable sources of information. We've learned that not all information sources tell the whole story, and that misinformation is very real, and that really trusted journalism is priceless. So for publishers, many are going to continue to struggle with that dilemma of maintaining both a printed and digital product. Ultimately, the former might not be sustainable for everybody. Long-term, the move to 100% digital press media seems inevitable for a lot of publishers. Again, both due to costs and as well as consumer preference. A lot of us are preferring that digital experience. That multifaceted digital experience. And we recently saw Montreal's La Presse, one of the most, the oldest, most reputable publications in Canada. La Presse recently went through that, moving to 100% digital, and ultimately they have emerged successful. They're on the road back to success. So ultimately, we think that there's definitely some struggles ahead. Not all publications will necessarily weather the storm, but The ability of press media to deliver really timely, local, relevant, and multifaceted content in an online format will definitely be its strength, because as marketers, we know that the highly trusted and engaged environments like press media, one of the most trusted environments out there, it'll always be a good place for us to align our brands and for us to connect with our audiences. So let's move into some more digital stuff. I found when we were putting this together a great ComScore piece of research. It kind of made me laugh. It said that, so that the research was from 2010, so a little while ago, and it said how much Canadians love surfing the web, and that we were spending close to an hour and a half a day online, one of the highest numbers on the planet. And it made me laugh because when we think about it now, it's kind of comical to think how far we've come and how much we're consuming now, and how we've managed to, infuse and carve away an extra 5 hours a day over the last decade. But what's helped with that is obviously mobile penetration. Penetration is about 98% in Canada right now. And our consistent desire for stimulus and our fear of boredom has us basically using our mobile devices almost like an appendage. So where do we go from here? So right now, like I said, we're at 98% mobile penetration, but only 86% of us are accessing the internet through our phones. So these are the non-smartphone holdouts, like my father-in-law, who still has a terrible phone. We can absolutely expect that the number of individuals who start, adopting that new technology will wipe out the old technology, and pretty soon we will all be accessing the internet through our mobile devices, obviously. So what that means for you is that your digital media planning really needs to have a mobile-first approach, like with website development. So stop planning digital media with the line of sight of laptops and larger screens in mind. When you're planning digital media, think mobile first. As well, technology and our online experience, any experiences that are going to start making things easier for us are seeing a huge uptake. So things like voice command on mobile devices and speakers. I know I speak messages, I speak text, I speak everything. So this is a big one for me specifically. So what this means for marketers is that you really need to up your SEO game. You need to ensure that your Google My Business is up to date. And you need to optimize your ad campaigns for near me searches. And you need to ensure that you're using in your search campaigns, those long tail keywords, because people are searching the way that they speak. So those really long drawn out searches. And this is important because I found a study, made me gasp a little bit. Us polite Canadians, about a third of us have been swearing at our smart speakers. And that's terrible. It's not the poor speaker's fault. What it means is that we need to develop, again, better SEO, so that when people are using voice commands, that we are delivering an experience that they are looking for. And lastly, when we have grown weary of typing searches and speaking searches, it's so exhaustive. More and more of us are seeing, we're seeing a huge growth in image recognition tools. And what this means, not necessarily from a media perspective, there aren't necessarily media implications, but what it means is it's reinforcing the need for marketers to have images cataloged on your site, so that when someone searches for an image in this fashion, which is becoming more prevalent, it means that your page is going to show up and not the page of the competitors. And of course, we could not talk about online media without talking about online video. So online video grew about 25% during the pandemic, and it shows no sign of stopping. Our Canadian online viewership is primarily driven by YouTube. Canadians love YouTube. And we know that YouTube right now is reaching about 91% of Canadians overall. And if we look specifically at kind of that 35 to 54-year-old demographic, YouTube's reaching about 98% of those individuals. So online video is going to continue to grow in its popularity among marketers, because we know it's what consumers want. So our advice is to marketers: invest in video content, make video ads, make video a part of your tactical media plans. Don't just plan with static imagery in mind, plan with video first. It's great because it boasts efficiency. It's really flexible in terms of optimizations and cancellations. Video will let you have some will deliver some measurable results that you can learn from. And with the scale that video possesses right now, online video can build reach really fast. And with that quick reach and those huge audiences, it allows us to glean insights quickly, and then we can action on them quickly. And lastly, we know that 10 million Canadians currently watch YouTube on their big fat TV screens. So what online video is also doing now is delivering a really quality at-home experience that can rival broadcast. Okay, we'll talk about social quickly. 62% of Canadians were active on social back, I think it was 10 years ago. Right now it's 85%. We spend about an hour and a half with paid social. And at the height of the pandemic, it was closer to 3 hours, but we've pretty much gone back to pre-COVID levels. Our primary use at the time was to kind of stay up to date on news and current events, but last year it was all about using social as a really key resource to connect with people and cope with loneliness and anxiety. And since we were stuck at home, people started adopting platforms that they weren't necessarily using before. They were doing it to connect with family and friends, but they also wanted to kind of go outside of their social circle and connect with people across generations and across backgrounds, because we all we're sharing this universal fate that made us want to connect. And TikTok was already popular on people's radar, young people, and TikTok grew a ton last year because it kind of it has that really easy music video type format, super simple to use, gave us lots of content to watch. We know that right now TikTok has about 1.1 billion active users, and it's becoming much more mainstream. Again, most of the audience right now is still in that under 35 age range, but it's definitely something that should be on everyone's radar. They have a self-serve dashboard that has a really simple UX, kind of similar to Pinterest. So if you've ever wondered if your audiences might be on TikTok, I encourage you to check out their targeting capabilities. You can go on to their ads, the self-serve ad platform, check out their targeting, build some audiences. And another great thing about social is that oftentimes you can do some tests pretty cost efficiently just to check it out. So it's not cost prohibitive. The other big winner was Twitch. Average hours turned jumped 100%. They now boast 1.7 billion hours watched a month. A lot of that came from gaming, but it was also musicians who grew that platform a lot last year, because musicians were looking for ways to mitigate the impact of their lost touring revenues. And for marketers, this is a unique opportunity, because what we know about Twitch audiences is that they are advertising averse. They use ad blockers a lot, but the on-platform kind of brand integrations that you can do on Twitch are viewed a bit more favorably by them, and they're tailor-made for the audience. So this sometimes requires a bit more investment. It's bought through Amazon, but the Twitch audience is very large and very attractive. So if you think it might be a fit for you, I encourage you to check it out for your B2C brand. So hands up if you know who this is. Last but not least, if your hands are up, you're likely one of the millions of Canadians who watched more than 13 hours of over-the-top streaming content last fall. And while south of the border, it's been called the streaming wars, in Canada, it's not the streaming wars. It's like a little skirmish because despite the influx of OTT services, Netflix is by far still the most popular in Canada, with over almost 17 million subscribers. And during Q1 and Q2 last year, all streaming services saw a record double-digit growth, and 42% of Canadians increased their over-the-top service subscriptions due to the pandemic. So what's the future of over-the-top OTT subscribers? So in 2019, we actually saw the percentage of Canadian households with over-the-top subscriptions surpass the percentage of the households with cable subscriptions. So that's pretty profound. And while we don't have the 2020 figure just yet, it's likely that that gap has grown a little bit more, obviously. With the volume of choices available and the low monthly rates, subscription services are kind of hard to pass up. And now they're putting theatrical releases out there, so it's unlikely that this trend is going to go anywhere but up. So how do you use this to connect with your Canadian audiences? So despite despite our love for over-the-top subscription services, a lot of those services are paid and they are ad-free, like Netflix. So right now, Canada is not at a point where we're able to purchase, big, huge national campaigns with massive audiences that build reach super quickly. We're just not there yet. The States is kind of at that point, but Canada isn't there yet. But what you can do is talk to your existing broadcast partners about their over-the-top offerings and see how you might test a portion of your budget there. Because ultimately, as these continue to grow exponentially, it's always a good idea to kind of test the waters in some new technology so you can acquire learnings that can help inform your future decisions. So we'll wrap up really quickly with some top 5 tips. So tip number 1, if you can, keep your marketing budgets. There was a study done by IPA and Millward Brown. It was a little while ago, but it's still relevant today, that shows that cutting your budgets in a downturn will only help defend your profits in the short term, but ultimately in the long run, it will weaken your brand and make you less profitable. And the other thing is that if other brands are cutting their budgets, the long-term benefit for you having an increased share of voice will be even greater for you. Seek efficiency, measurability, and flexibility. Not all media, can be measured apples to apples. There's some oranges too, but try to equalize your media a bit as you can. Look at CPMs and decide, how best to reach your audience and make informed decisions. Seek flexibility when you can. We know that some media has some really tough cancellation policies that might initially scare you away, but those are always negotiable. So work with your media vendors to negotiate a cancellation policy that maybe makes you feel more comfortable. And lastly, measure everything, because we know that you'll only know what's working for you if you can, measure it and trace it back to an action. Media partners. So shout out to all the media partners that might be listening. You guys have had a heck of a year and you continue to be a great resource for agencies and clients. So if you're ever wondering how a media is performing or if it might be right for an upcoming campaign, I really encourage you to reach out to your media vendors. Ask those tough questions, ask very pointed questions, and feel free to challenge them. Give them an opportunity to help solution with you. I have had countless occasions where I've had a conversation. I've gone into a conversation with a media partner, assuming that their product just wasn't going to fit with my goals for what I was doing, and come out of that conversation surprised by a new tactic or a new technology or something that made it absolutely worth considering. So I encourage you to really rely on your media partners. They really are great sources. Stay current. It's very hard to stay current right now, but we actually have something that we think we might help, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And last but not least, don't count any media out. So we know that all media is evolving. It's evolving to the needs of customers and marketers. And we truly believe that all media currently still has a role in the ecosystem. So, don't assume that, TV advertising is too cost prohibitive. Work with those vendors to, find some potentially digital opportunities for you to explore. Don't count out press media. Their online readership is up and there's loads of great content alignments. And again, press media is a really trusted environment. We know that radio and out-of-home are bouncing back. We're dying to all get outdoors. So keep radio and out-of-home on your consideration list. And we know that, when it comes to digital, social, online video, they almost always have a place in your media plans. So I'll wrap up. So this is when we talked about staying up to date and the importance of that. We have a little tips sheet that we would really, really love to share with you. It's called the 5 most important places to get the latest and greatest media information. And what it is our top 5 choices of places and sources where you can subscribe to social channels and blogs and newsletters and podcasts. So it's our top 5 pick that, will, in as little as 15 minutes a week, will help you stay up to date on all these crazy trends as they evolve. And it also comes with some additional resources that are ones worth seeking out as well, some more industry specific ones that you can take a look at. So what I encourage you to do is open your browsers right now, do a quick email to info@jankelley.com. You can type whatever you want in the subject line. You can type one pager, you can type media. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. And just send us that quick email and we will reply right away with this awesome handy one pager that will help keep you up to date. And this is one of the ways that we're trying to help kind of empower the marketers to do better and to be great. And ultimately, if you have any questions, if there's anything that you ever want to discuss, obviously Shannon and I and the rest of the Jan Kelley team are, just a website click or a LinkedIn click away. So we're always here to help as well. So I think, depending on timing, we can move on to Q&A.
Are you ready? We got lots of questions, Terri.
Oh my goodness.
First of all,
okay, I'll do my best.
On behalf of the 100 people that are here this morning, my goodness, thank you for that. That was awesome. I'm also going to ask you to record some sort of meditation podcast for us all because your voice is very soothing. So,
okay.
Okay.
All the headset. It's all in the headset.
I'll try to make these questions easy for you, but you're kind of on the hot seat here. So we'll see what we can do. All right. First question, and this was sent in from LinkedIn prior to the event today. So this was definitely a hot one, is can you give us an example of how you had to, you and the team had to pivot your media plan because of COVID? How can you think of an example of when you had to do that, or what you did, or what how you approached it?
Yeah, for sure. So a couple of examples. So we have a client that works in the B2B space that relies, it's Durkin. They rely pretty heavily on different events and things of that nature to help connect with people in the building science community. And in 2020, we had a media plan that revolved around supporting all these different events and things that they were trade shows and things like that were going to be happening. And really quickly that changed and we had to work with them as an agency to put together online experiences and webinars that would still help them connect with people in the building community. And it actually, it happened really quickly and it turned out really, really well. Coming on the end, we were having webinars with, with over, 1,000 people attending them. And from a media perspective, it changed from supporting events, offline events, to supporting the promotion of these online webinars. So that happened really, really quickly, and they saw some great connections from that, and they saw people come to those webinars that they might have never met at these on-site events.
Awesome. All right, question number 2. Are you ready?
Sure.
If you had to invest marketing dollars right now, where would you be the most confident in investing those dollars?
It really depends on your industry, obviously.
Okay.
If it's a blanket, kind of a blanket statement, I would say that online video would probably be our number one choice. It meets consumer demand. You can do so much for your brand in a video that isn't always possible in other places. So I would definitely say online video would be probably the number one place. And then again, depending on the industry and the audience and such, I'd say that social is typically a good place to start, with the different social channels that are out there, from B2C kind of focused ones to B2B. You can usually find a social channel that has some great targeting capabilities to help you connect with your audiences.
The interesting thing about video too, Terri, is that the movement away from these big produced videos to these shorter, I'm reluctant to use the word scrappy, but the faster, easier videos seems to be a real trend. Even on LinkedIn, you see people doing these shorter videos. We created the content drive-through as an offering for people who are interested on how to do video quickly and easily. Do you have any tips on that? Have you seen that movement across all platforms, or mostly just social platforms in regards to video changing in format?
It's happening across all platforms, and I agree with you. Like the idea of having those polished, pre-produced type videos that's not necessarily the expectation anymore. We encourage clients to, where it's important for the brand, work and have something that's a bit more polished. But consumers are absolutely open to, you have a GoPro or whatever in your hand and you're at an event and they want to see you kind of on the ground, live, what you're doing, what's happening in your warehouse. So we encourage clients. It's scary at first, but even something as simple as using social stories, using LinkedIn stories, which is available now, and just giving people a bit of insight. It's definitely something that people should be trying out, and it doesn't have to be scary. Just give it a try.
Okay, so we've got a bit of a harder question here to prepare you. We had a question from our audience saying, how much has the 2021 Edelman Trust Barometer for Canada factored into your analysis today? We're seeing a significant decrease in trust index for media this year, and that's concerning.
Oh, that's a very, very interesting question. So the resources that we've used were all very trusted, reputable resources. Obviously, trust in media, I think it's something that has, it's been a halo effect from possibly what we've seen south of the border. But I feel like for Canadians, we do still have a significant amount of trust in our media, especially when it comes to our news media and press media. So, it's kind of a difficult one. I don't think that the effects that they've seen south of the border are necessarily to the same extent that we have in Canada. I do still feel like we have a lot of trust.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier in your presentation about image recognition tools. We're just, the question is really about how are these being used? Intent. So I'm not clear on the question, so maybe you might be able to expand on that a bit more.
Yeah, so how it's being used, again, in terms of media implications, there aren't necessarily any just yet, but how people are using the image recognition tools are just simply through their mobile devices. You can do image, there's a huge uptake in image searches where people are, seeing, any item, a Cadbury Easter cream egg, whatever, and literally they just take a picture of it, and that picture basically is the search. And what'll happen is you take a picture of basically anything, and it pulls up Google search results to take you to websites to learn more about that thing you've taken a picture of. So that's why it's important. Google's trying to recognize an image. So if you are a manufacturer or whatever it might be, it's so important to have your catalog of imagery available, because Google is going to try and match that image that people are taking on their phone with something that they find online. And if that doesn't exist on your website, who knows where people might end up.
Okay, last question, and this is definitely not my question. It's from a friend. My friend was wondering if there was someone on TikTok, a highly reputable media outlet that you believe we should all follow for entertainment/education purposes. Terri, as the expert that you are, who would you suggest?
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's not my question, my friend's question.
I would say that obviously depends on your interests. If you have interest in like makeup, fashion versus dancing versus whatever, so it's a very loaded question. I would say that there's a few people out there. Obviously, it's primarily used. Dance influencers are probably the most highest on the platform. So there's that teenager Charli D'Amelio, I think her name is Charli D'Amelio. She's like a little US teenager. She's one of the biggest social influencers. So she does a lot of great stuff. I know that my kids love that stuff. If you're looking for a TikTok influencer that is a well-known name, that you can kind of, someone that you already kind of know and you want to see what they're doing. I've been hearing that Jason Derulo is doing a ton of awesome stuff, and he's actually doing some stuff with brands as well. And I would say if you are a parent with teenage or young girls and you want to kind of have something to talk to them about and be relevant, there's some twins on there, Lucas and Marcus. I can't remember what their name is. If you search them, it's the TikTok twins, Lucas and Marcus. You can follow them, and then you have something to talk to your teenage girls about to make you sound cool.
Well, thank you for letting my friends stay relevant. One last question for you, speaking about TikTok, is how do brands, you mentioned this earlier on Clubhouse and TikTok and all of these new places, like how do you know when to experiment? And is it worth it to be an early adopter for these different platforms, or is it better just to wait and see how people do it and take kind of more of a tried and true approach? What's your appetite on that?
Our attitude is, especially with some of the social platforms where they are typically pretty cost efficient to try out, if you feel it's right for your brand, if you think there is a place for your brand on TikTok. Obviously, if you are selling, if you're a B2B manufacturer or something like that, it might not be the place for you. But if you feel it's relevant for your brand, we always encourage people to get in and try something out early, because obviously you'll have a higher share of voice for your category. If your competition isn't there yet, you'll kind of be the first in your space. So again, we encourage you, if you think it makes sense for your brand, go on to the self-serve platform. Again, the targeting options are all there for you, so you can kind of figure out pretty quickly if it might make sense for your brand, depending on the targeting options that are available. And you can see how many people with those characteristics are on the platform, because it kind of does that audience measurement for you, or the audience calculation for you. So we always encourage our clients to kind of be bold and try things out and be an early adopter. Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Terri. It's
Thank
a
you.
pleasure. I appreciate you putting this together and leaving your house and coming into.
I know, I'm so excited to be in the office. This is great.
Oh, can you click to the next slide and we'll just talk about what's
Absolutely.
next. So the next Toast and Jam is going to be happening in May. And this is another one that I have just keep getting the same question over and over again, is digital experience. What does it mean? What do I do? How do I do it better? How do I get results from it? How do I really look at the fact that we're now going to be really moving into this even more of a virtual world, and managing customer expectations around that? So that'll be happening in May. Keep watching on LinkedIn, and we're excited for that session later on this year. So thank you all. Have an amazing day. And don't forget, if you're looking for that one pager, just to drop an email to info@jankelley.com. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.